interesting question. You're wondering, does the elephant's digestive system process the insects that they eat on accident by eating the grass and the leaves? And I would say definitely yes. It would be like us. Take care. I read a statistic, I don't know, some years ago, that we as humans swallow on average 7 spiders a year while we sleep. So for any of you that are arachnophobes, I'm sorry about that, but apparently that's how many we swallow while we sleep, and our bodies do fine. So I can't see why the elephants' bodies wouldn't do fine processing whatever little bit of accidental protein they get in there. Plus it's very small and elephants are very large, and also elephants only digest about 25% of what they eat, so I'd be surprised if they even, because it's such a tiny organism, if they even digest any of it, it might just come out the back end. Now Scott has a beautiful bird he would like to show you, so let's head on over to him while our elephants meander into the thick scrub and I head down and see if I can find you something furry and with claws.
Well, this beautiful bird certainly can digest insects, and that makes up the majority of the Burchell starling's diet. They have got an interesting hunting technique. They kind of run along the ground and snuffle up their prey, as opposed to swooping down and catching it like the lilac-breasted roller we were watching a little bit earlier does. So they're quite good runners, actually. A lot of the starlings, they run along the ground, catching small prey for themselves. At the moment, you can see, though, it's probably got a full belly. It's calling away and just taking some time to make sure its beautiful feathers are in the perfect position and well kept after. It's something that wild animals spend a lot of time doing, probably more time than us as humans, is grooming themselves, and that's because I guess they live in a slightly dirtier environment, and they're also plagued by a whole bunch of parasites that we thankfully don't have too much trouble with. So it's just making sure that it's in perfect working order, and it's a good example now because half of its body is in the sun, so you can see its sunny side is iridescing and shining quite beautifully, whereas the shady side of her is quite dull and drab. So if you were to look at this bird on a cloudy day, you could easily drive past it without noticing its beauty. But at the moment we're getting some wonderful, wonderful views of its purpley blue sheen. Oh, is it about to take off? What are you planning, Mr. Starling? Or Mrs. Starling? Difficult to distinguish between male and female. Hello, Gina. You are watching in DC, and you've mentioned that starlings are a pest where you are. I'd be interested to know, are they alien starlings? Were they introduced into DC, or were they natives? Because you tend to find that most often pests are animals that generally don't necessarily belong in any given area, and they've been introduced and flourished and therefore caused a problem. Or, in BC, in British Columbia, not DC. And another thing that I'd like to know is if they've become pests due to our silly movements as humans. Now, with a lot of animals, and I think the general rule that should be applied to all animals is do not feed them. Because if you start feeding wild animals, they can become a nuisance. And even in some of the rest camps here in the Kruger National Park, the starlings have also become a bit of a menace, and that's due to us being silly and feeding them, and then they realize that they can steal chips off our plates, and they continue to do that. So it's not only in British Columbia that they can be a pest, it's also here in South Africa. But generally, it's due to our bad thinking or planning that causes wild animals to start misbehaving. So that's something that's worth remembering. Let us know what kind of starlings they are. Okay, you say they eat cattle and chicken feed, so maybe it wasn't that we were feeding them necessarily, we were just feeding our cows and our chickens, and they caught onto it. But to be fair, the cows and chickens don't belong there. So it's not really their fault that they've been forced into this situation by us. But yes, I could understand if you farm cows and chickens that you'll get frustrated. that you're not only feeding them or having to pay to feed them, that you're having to pay and feed. Oh, there's a cuckoo. Please land. Please land, cuckoo. Right there. I'm not sure if it was a Deirdre's or a Class's, but it sounds like it's probably not a bad thing. I'm finding it a little bit tricky getting used to where the signal for this vehicle is good and where it is not, but bear with me as I come to grips with the Sabi sands after having spent the last year and a half up in Kenya. Another pretty bird is up on our left. Seems like this afternoon is a birding afternoon for me. A beautiful yellow-billed hornbill. And it was thinking about calling. It let off a few crook, 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 crook. Ah, it's so wonderful when the sunlight catches their bright yellow beak. Oh, off it goes. And the reason why I was hoping that it would call is they sometimes lift their wings above their heads. Something looks much better when they do it, though. And something that also looks very good and better than me at the moment is Tingana. So why don't you go and see what he's up to?
Well, he may look better than you, Scott, but he was walking very similar to how you were walking a few days ago. For those of you that don't know, Scott impaled his foot on a thorn and was limpy-loo for a few days and was walking around with a little bit of a kind of hobbled manner, just like Tingana was. So nice to see Scott has bounced back. Hopefully Tingana will be the same. You can see he's now on his back, typical hot cat style, where he just kind of relaxes there, opens up that stomach and allows a bit of a breeze to kind of blow over. While he was lying the other way just now, we were able to get a really nice view of his left side, and BM and I got out our binoculars and we had a really good look at that left paw and left shoulder area, and he's got a couple little scrapes and cuts on the shoulder. They're not easy to see, but there are a few there, and then he's got a little wound right on the top left side of his paw, and it looks as though that's what's causing the issue. I don't know what's caused it, whether it's a bite from something like a hyena or another leopard or something like that, but there's definitely some sort of puncture wound that's gone in there. It also could, of course, be when he wrestled some sort of animal. I know he tackled a waterbuck recently on Cheetah Plains just after we last saw him with that impala kill, and maybe that's what's happened, is as that waterbuck has fallen, so his wrist has been caught underneath it, and maybe a little stump has gone in there, or some sort of a thorn or a branch. You never know. It's really difficult to say without actually have seen the injury take place. Also, if it had been a cat, I feel like he would have a lot more scratches and scrapes and scars on his face and around his neck areas, which he doesn't seem to have. So difficult to say what's happened to him, but there definitely is a little wound on that left paw, but I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be just fine, but it's going to require a lot of rest and a lot of relaxation to get right from it. The good news is that it's definitely, that seems like he's found food since yesterday. So yesterday we spent the whole afternoon with him, and his belly does have a little bit of a round look to it today compared to yesterday. So I think maybe he's managed to find himself maybe a little baby impala or something on quarantine last night. I believe there's a whole bunch of vultures on quarantine at the moment, and so I wonder if maybe he didn't capture something small that was born last night. There's also, as we know, a couple of wildebeest that have been born, and I believe Scott did see our little footloose this morning and was running around apparently, and all well and fine. And for those of you that don't know, and I don't know if Scott's mentioned it, he had an absolutely insane morning where he saw a wildebeest give birth on foot, which is absolutely insane, and he managed to see the whole process. Apparently it was a much quicker process than what we saw from our lady friend yesterday, which begs the question as to why, and we were discussing it must mean that this must have been her first one that we saw, because it took so much longer than the one that Scott had on foot this morning. The one that Scott had on foot was about 10 minutes and it was out, as opposed to the almost 3-hour marathon of that poor female yesterday morning. But Tingana will most certainly go after a baby wildebeest. That would be a prime snack for him, even though I would imagine the herd would try and band together and chase him. If he can get that baby wildebeest on its own, I wouldn't be surprised he goes and grabs it and runs off with it. So you never know what he's gotten, but he's definitely found himself something in the last 24 hours, and that's great news, because when he's injured like this, as long as he can keep sustaining himself with nutrients and try and rest as much as possible, that paw will eventually heal and he will be okay. Now, I was talking about the baby wildebeest, and it sounds like the man himself who had his midwife gloves on this morning is now looking after a couple of other little ones from a different species.
Yes, thankfully I'm looking after some older children today. I was quite traumatized by being a midwife this morning. Not an easy job, and to all the mothers out there, I take my hat off to you. It was an incredible scene this morning. Haven't come up with the name yet for the individual that was born. I'm thinking something along the lines of Sputnik, which was a Russian spaceship, and the reason why I think it would be applicable to call it something spaceship-like, because it came rocketing out of its mother's belly while she was lying down. Much different to Tristan's saga yesterday, which took a lot longer, and was actually the mother was standing up when the baby was eventually delivered. So I think Sputnik and Footloose sounds quite good. We still need a name for the third and firstborn that we were unlucky not to witness, and who knows, hopefully luck will be on our side and we'll be able to witness a few more wildebeest births over the coming week, as the rest of that herd there has about, I think, another 4 females that need to give birth. As you can see, all these tiny baby impalas are all looking really relaxed and cute and feeling safe, with all their parents keeping a beady eye on them. Hello, Ralph. You would like to know if we actually did assist in the birth? No, we just assisted in making those young wildebeest famous. And they are now a celebrity. Oh, sorry, not Ralph. Bobby. I'm not sure how I got that wrong. Maybe it's the heat that's frying my little brain. But Bobby, no, we didn't assist in any way. We were just watching from a distance. We're only kidding by saying that we were the midwives. We're claiming a little bit where we shouldn't be. But it certainly was very, very special to be there. As it is special to be spending time with these young impala as they learn the ways of the wild, stretching their legs, honing their skills. You can already see how tuned in this one is, using its ears independently to focus on different sounds. And wouldn't it be wonderful for us to be able to just test drive what it would be like to be certain of the wild animals? All of them, really. I'd like to spend a day in all of the wild animals' shoes or hooves or paws. Not only would it be nice to be an eagle, but also a leopard or an impala. And I guess we just have to let our imaginations run wild. Hello, Pisces. You would like to, well, you've suggested that it's like an impala nursery, and that is exactly what it is. There's a whole host of young impala and their mothers all relaxing here. And not only them, there's a few other antelope. You may have just got a blur of grey at the back of this shot earlier. That was a young waterbuck that went running past. There's a few Nyala or Nyala on the scene. Nyala is the wrong pronunciation. Inyala is the more applicable one. There you can see a waterbuck or two in the background. So it's a happy place for these antelope, and they're all kind of helping one another out, because the more of them that are in one area, the less chance there is of a predator sneaking up on any of them as individuals. Speaking of animals that may be sneaking up on them, I'm told this is an area where a young male leopard called Hosanna likes to spend a lot of time. So if we're lucky, these antelope will help us to detect him. Ooh, now we've got a scene unfolding here. We haven't turned the camera to slow motion, although it may appear to be that way. This Inyala bull is performing one of their displays where they erect all of that hair that runs along their spine to make them look as big and impressive as possible. And they do this slow kind of ritualistic pacing about, which looks absolutely bizarre, in my opinion. And I would guess that there's 1 or 2 other males in this area, or possibly some females that he's trying to impress. But it's usually something that males will do to establish dominance over other males. It's a good example of how animals will use visual cues to try and outcompete. Let me see if I can creep forward a bit. It's a good example of how wild animals will use visual cues to compete with one another rather than going straight into a physical battle, which is typically what us as humans tend to do. Well, it seems like he's calmed down now, but thank you for showing us a little glimpse into how impressive you can look. Seems like the oxpeckers are bothering him a little bit, so he should be a little bit more welcoming to them, considering they're doing a great job in keeping pests off of him. It's just when they climb into the animal's ears and nostrils that I feel a bit of sympathy for them. Hi, Paula. You would like to know how old will the impala be when they leave their mothers? And it depends on whether they're male or female. If they are females, they'll typically stay within their same natal herd, quite a lot like lions, I guess. And the young males will move off from just about a year of age. So as soon as their mothers give birth to the next youngster, the young males will tend to move off and start joining the bachelor herds. It's not a set rule, though, and if we look around here, I can even see one or two young males. There's one straight ahead of us, kind of at 1 o'clock over there. He's just got his head down. But yeah, there's no set rule, but anywhere from a year onwards, the males will leave and the females will stick around and continue to build their natal herd. Very good. Well, we're just around the corner from Chitwa Dam, so we're going to continue down there and see what's happening on the water's edge. And while we do that, we're going to send you back to Noel for an update.
Hi everyone, sorry for my side face and the back of my head. Senzo and I, that is, we are where we found the Birmingham males this morning. So James, on his way to Chitwa during our private rehearsal this morning, found part of the Styx Pride, and we followed that part of the Styx Pride into the thick bush to the rest of the Styx Pride, and 2 of the Birmingham males were there, and then they had what was left of a kudu. So we are where we were yesterday, and sorry again, the reason why you're looking at the back of my head is I hurt Wendy badly the other day trying to stare into camera and driving off-road, and I really don't want to damage her anymore. I really love her. Oh, I see him, and I see him eating. Fabulous. Okay. I just want to... Oh! Sorry, guys. Come, Wendy. We love you. Okay, I just want to show you quickly just here where the ruminant sac and some of the bones are. So they ate the outside of the sac. The cubs were here. Everyone was here. All 10 of the cubs, all 3 females, and then 2 of the Burmese. We're missing 2. But there's some of the bones that are left from the spine of the kudu. And then there's the inside of the ruminant sac there. They don't eat the insides. It's vegetable matter. They don't want it. So especially the cubs will eat the sac that contains it. So that's the crime scene. And then in front, we have our boy. Hello, boy. Now, this morning, he was just behind us, and he had taken part of what was left of the kudu, which is really not much, and was keeping it to himself, and he was chasing everyone away. And his brother was sitting in the rain. He didn't even have his little mohawk anymore. It was just like flat hat head. It was horrible. And now he's moved about, I don't know, I would say 50 foot, roughly. And now he's just eating the tiniest little bits of that kudu. Now, we talk about lions often whenever we can see them, and especially because it's Big Cat Week on Nat Geo Wild. And don't forget, for anyone watching from the States, on the 14th, during Big Cat Week on Nat Geo Wild, we have our special live show at 10 o'clock Eastern Time in the States. And hopefully we'll have lots of big cats around then. The Sticks went south over Little Gallery after they were finished eating. And then I don't know where the other 2 Burmese were. We heard a 3rd one this morning. The 2nd one that was here is no longer here. And then the 4th one, you know, you all would know as much as I know, possibly on someone else. Well, it's definitely somewhere. He's just not here. So we talk about big cats and how greedy they are, specifically lions, and how lions don't like to share. And I'm trying not to make a pun there, so I'm going to leave the rest of that sentence alone. So basically what he's done is, it doesn't matter that there's nothing left. This is the equivalent of you taking the last piece of cake and then taking the cake plate and licking all the crumbs and then wetting your finger and trying to get the last little bit of icing that's sort of smeared the edge of it off while you're staring out of the corner of your eye at, I don't know, your brother or your aunt or your uncle pick something who actually wanted the cake. So he's chased everyone away. So for anyone that's sensitive and doesn't like watching predators feed themselves, might look away. I find it fascinating because it is part of nature and what nature does, and an integral part. And if you are out there and you can get a good view of him, and anyone that has been following the show for a very long time, that keeps track of all the different Birminghams, all 4 of them, and what their names are, if you want to share with any of our new viewers what this is. You guys did some wonderful gifts for our new viewers when we were talking about Hasana and Tingana the other day. So if you would like to do something similar for our new viewers and put up a couple of gifts so that everyone that might just be joining us now can also know what you all know, that would be really great. All right, well, all the leopard lovers out there, let's head on over to Tingana for a little bit of an update. Apparently, he's decided to lift his head. This guy is going to keep on chewing on this kudu carcass, so we will stay here and we'll see you just now.
Well, he did lift his head and he got up and turned around and has promptly plonked himself back down again in the shade. So no movement too far just yet. Still a sleepy cat at this stage and still taking it very easy. It was amazing though, he kind of just popped his head up, looked all very alert, stood up, turned around and then plonked straight back down again without so much as a second thought about flopping down. So I think he's not quite ready. Maybe he stood up and felt the sun still quite harsh and decided, I'm going to leave it at that and rather not go walking around just yet. But it's interesting because I was just saying to VM now, yesterday we sat with him until around 6ish where he started to stir at that sort of period of the day, and it seems as though it's starting to happen again. He kind of is at least a lot more awake now and is a lot more kind of alert as to what's going on, even though it doesn't look like it that right now. So, James, Richard, you wondering if we ever relocated on that unknown mating pair? Well, yes, they were relocated not the next day. So they were seen at Djuma. The next day they weren't found, and the day after they were found on Arathusa going westwards. And I believe they then broke apart that night. So since then, that male has not been seen as far as I know. So, but the female has been, the Ingrid Dam young female, she has been seen, but the male, I have no reports on him, so maybe he's around as well, I'm not sure. Tingana was down in Little Gowrie, so I'm not 100% sure he kind of met up with Tingana and that there was any sort of dispute between those two males. I feel like they were too far apart. Maybe it was, you know, like I say, more in that waterbuck kill that he made on Cheetah Plains. That was just after he had the impala here at Djuma, the last time we saw him before this little period. And that waterbuck is a heavy, big set animal, and pulling that down is no easy feat, and you never know. Like I say, maybe as he pulled it down, it just pinned him on a branch, and that's what caused a little kind of branch to go into his paw and actually cause a bit of damage to one of the bones in his foot. You never know, but I don't think he's had any altercation. But it would be nice to know where that male's gone, that unknown male, and what he's up to. I feel like he was seen a lot during that mating period because of the female being so relaxed, and he was so interested in her that allowed sort of visuals of him and people to actually see him. In fact, I even recorded a little bit of a video of him so that we could show all of you guys, and I completely forgot about it. So for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, we had James actually was the one who found it. We had a male leopard that was in our area how many days ago? It was about 4 or 5 days ago, and he was with an unknown female at the time, which we identified as Ingrid Dam young female. And so this is a little kind of thing that Ferg and James managed to get, and that's the male there. You can see he's got quite light colored eyes, quite boxy face. Then the female, so that's the female over there, and both of them were near Philemon's dip. Now, unfortunately, I think this is the one that's more of the female than the male, so I'll go back to one of the male, but that's them kind of just looking around and just having a little bit of a look. So it's just to get a sort of spot pattern there for the female. I'm pretty sure it's Ingrid Dam Young female, and from the way that she looks and when she turns her face, she's got the 5 spots on the right side. So there we go. As she turns, it's pretty much, I'm sure that it is her. I have seen her a few times in my time. Now the male that's him over there, so we'll get a better view of him. You can see quite a bulky leopard around the shoulder areas, so hopefully we will get to see him at some point, although I'm not that unhappy that we're not seeing him at this stage, because ultimately if he moves in here, then it's going to be very dangerous for Tandi's little one, and that little ball of cuteness we want to stick around to be able to survive. So hopefully that's going to be the case. Hopefully we're going to get a situation where, you know, Tandi's cub will be alive for quite some time, and Tingana will hold on for now, and then this boy can start pushing in the west at some point, and maybe we'll get some fleeting glimpses of him. But there we go. So for all of you that didn't know about it, that's who we were talking about. He seems to be a beautiful individual, doesn't he? I know a lot of you have said, isn't it Anderson? It's most definitely not Anderson. Anderson does not look like that. He's got a different eye color, and he's got a different nose structure too, as well as his nose being quite a dark black, whereas this male has got still quite a pink nose. Now, a number of you have also asked me how old I think that male is. That male I would recommend. I haven't personally seen him in real life. It's only the footage that James had of him and photographs and other things, but because his nose is quite pink and his bulk and his ears are very, very clean, there's no tattiness in those ears, I would say that this male is probably around sort of 5 or 6 years old, maybe a little bit younger even, so somewhere in that area. It'll be interesting to know where he came from. We don't know at all where he's from. We don't know where he's come from. Nobody knows who he is, but interesting that he's arrived here, and he seems to be very relaxed with one vehicle. James said to me that he was really very, very, very relaxed in his movement, and that there was 2 vehicles there and he didn't run or anything like that, and so maybe he's getting a little bit more comfortable, which is at least good news if he is going to stick around. But it is definitely a concern from a point of view of all of our young boys, Tamba, Hosana and Tingana. They all are going to have a tough time if a new male comes in here, because he's not going to allow any of those boys to settle down or to stay in this particular section. So he can stay in the west for now. He's happily can fit in and slot in there for the meantime, and maybe in a year or two's time, once the others are all kind of established, then he can start pushing back this way. It means that Tingana's got his work cut out for him, and an injury like this is going to make that a lot harder to be able to keep his area safe. So this is very, very cool. Sebastian, who I'm sure everybody knows, one of our cameramen, his mom is actually watching, and she's asking, how long do leopards sleep for in a day? Well, they sleep for roughly, it will be about 13 to 15 hours, somewhere around there. It depends. This male is sleeping a lot more because of his injury at the moment, so he's in a situation where he's kind of having to rest because of this sore paw of his, but sometimes, you know, that will mean that he'll kind of go over maybe 15 hours, but for the most part they kind of spend between sort of 12 and 15 hours sleeping in a day's period. A lot of people believe that leopards are very mobile at night and that they move a lot at night, and actually it's not really the case. They spend a lot of time moving the sort of hour before sunset and time after sunset for 2-3 hours, and then they actually spend a lot of time during the middle part of the night spending a bit of time resting, and they'll go towards water and they'll sit around water holes for a bit, and then they'll carry on again. So they're not as mobile, and it obviously is dependent on the individual, because we know Tingana, when he's fit and healthy, can walk all over the place all of the time, and Anderson is the same. But you find somebody like Hosana, he doesn't seem to move as much, so he'll rest a lot more in between his moving periods. But really nice to hear from you, and I hope that you're having a wonderful day. And just to let you know that Sebastian is well, and that he is doing very well on his new things that he's up to in terms of the drone. And Sebastian also says hello and he sends all of his love. So there we go. Always nice when some of our family members are watching. It's always good for team morale. Sheila, you're wondering, you say odd thought, and this is a rather strange thought, and one that I honestly have never thought of, but you're wondering, do any of the cats ever get insomnia? Well, I suppose not really, and the reason why I say this is because they're always alert. So, or maybe yes is actually the answer, is that they're always alert. And so even though he seems sleeping like this, if I start this car or I had to rustle a leaf on a tree here, he will instinctively pop his head up straight away, ears will focus, eyes will be up. So even though they're sleeping, it's not like our sleep where we kind of go to sleep and we're in this deep sleep and we really do rest. These guys have a very light sleep, and they have to be like that. Oh, bless you, Tingana. That was a big sneeze. Obviously got a fly up the nose, not very pleasant. But at the end of the day, they have things like hyenas and lions and other leopards that they have to worry about, and so they can't afford to be in a deep sleep. So maybe that counts as some sort of insomnia because they never really get a true proper rest. But for the most part, no, I don't think that they're still resting at the end of the day, and their eyes are closed for a lot of the sort of hot parts of the day. So interesting question. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe somebody out there does know whether or not cats suffer from insomnia, but I've certainly never seen any of our wild cats suffer from having a good nap during the hot part of the day. Now, Noel is with the Birmingham males, and I'm sure if they are not feeding, they will be in a very similar pose, except I think their bellies will be a lot larger than Tingana's.
Interesting question, Tristan. Do cats suffer from insomnia? Lions definitely don't suffer from insomnia. They sleep for 16 to 20 hours a day. But they don't sleep like we sleep. Sorry, guys. Hold on one sec. It was cold this morning and I've got a little bit of a cough. Please excuse me. But they don't sleep heavy like we sleep. They sleep sort of a little bit here, a little bit there. That being said, though, I've seen big males like this going into a REM cycle where they're obviously dreaming and sort of twitching their limbs. And if you have a domesticated dog, similar fashion. So what he's doing here, and you'll see it really nicely, is he's licking the skin, licking with his rough tongue, pulling the skin off with his front teeth, and then trying to get his carnassial shears, his molars, onto what is left of that meat, and then chewing it with a crunching noise. Those carnassial shears are very, very, very sharp. They can't chew with their front teeth like we do. Yeah, he knows I'm talking about him. He's also super annoyed. There's lots of flies around him. The light's really difficult right now because it's such a bright day, and he's found this funny little shady spot that's casting interesting shadows. So the detail is not as good as I would like. I haven't even taken any photos because it's not quite where I want it. What I want him to do is I want him to stand up and reposition a little bit, because when he stands up and repositions, then we're going to get a lot better light. But obviously the shade for him is a better spot. It keeps him cooler and helps him with the digestion of his food. Andrea, very cool question. You're wondering if a lioness would try and fight off an unwanted male. Andrea, most definitely. One of the places that I worked at for a while had a coalition takeover, and one of the prides that was falling into that scenario had little cubs, and I watched one of those females beat up those new males like you would not believe. I also worked on a property that had a female that broke away from her pride and did not want to be around her pride members at all, and she would fight off not only the other females, but she would fight off the one male that was there as well, and really sort of give him a go. I've also watched a female that had two males, a father and son, that were fighting, both fully grown, and she got in the middle of the two of them, beat up the older male, the father, and then sort of glared at her son like, you two are idiots, stop it now. I've watched a female do that with two males in a coalition on somewhere else where I've worked as well, and instead of sort of being submissive with her, as what will normally happen, they turned tail on her and ended up injuring her quite badly. It gets quite fierce. But I mean, the claws and the teeth that are involved in these scenarios is hectic. So even if you're trying to be nice, I mean, you can only get sort of beaten up so often before it's just your aggression is going to retaliate. Now, when it's around food like this, it gets even worse, and it's very difficult. There's cubs sometimes die around kills, which why when the sticks were here this morning with their 10 cubs, we didn't get to see too much of the scenarios as most of the kill was done, but you would have seen a lot of protection from the mothers. Now, please excuse the sound in the background. I've got another vehicle that's joined me. Mac, you're curious to know if this male lion made the kill. Mac, yesterday afternoon, we were with part of the Styx Pride and they were looking hungry. Then this morning we found that same part. It was one female with most of the youngsters, and then they led us into where the kill was with the other 2 females and the very small cubs and these 2 males. I have a feeling, Mac, that it was the females that made the kill, but I'm just guessing there. Males do kill for themselves, most definitely. I have a feeling that the 2 females with the young cubs that we hadn't seen yesterday afternoon might have been attached with one of these males, if not 2 of these males, and then everyone could have had a hand. But from what I saw with the stomach size of the females and the cubs, I do think that they had the first bites of the meat. I also think one of the reasons why this male is being so overprotective of the skin and bones is that he didn't get enough earlier. Sean, you're curious to know if it's a baby or an adult. Sean, this is a full-grown adult. It was quite a big kudu. It fed 15 lions. Look, 10 of those lions were cubs, but it did feed 15 lions, so it's quite big. It's just very mangled because there isn't much left. It's skin and just the legs and everything. But it's interesting that you asked that, Sean, because earlier today when we were here with our private rehearsal, I was looking at how full everybody was, and actually wondering if possibly there had been a second kill in the area. But from the behavior that the females were giving with the cubs and the where I showed you the ruminant sacks, I have a feeling that it was just the one. They were very, very full. And I think that they did it around 2 or 3 o'clock this morning, because that's when we had our thunder and our lightning and a bit of rain, and the time it would take to eat that big fully grown adult kudu and fill those bellies. And when we found them this morning, well, James found the females at about 4:45, and then we found the rest of the pride sort of about 20 minutes after that, so that would be 3 hours worth of eating. Now, Scott is sitting with one of Africa's... Sorry, I'm just going to wait for this vehicle to move. I'm so sorry about the sound in the background. Just give me half a second. All right, that's a little bit better. Sorry about that. Scott's sitting with one of our other large predators of the African bushveld, who has an even different way, more different... Sorry, that was horrible English. A more interesting way of eating its food. So let's head on over to Scott.
Yes, we do have what is normally a very large predator, but this is a tiny baby. It's a crocodile. And I heard that there were some new hatchlings lurking about at the Chitwa Dam, where we are currently located. And there's one of them right there. And quite lucky to see it, because it blends in very well with its surroundings. I wonder where all its brothers and sisters are. Hopefully not too many of them have already been eaten. Sadly, though, the reality is, as ferocious of a predator that they will grow into when they are born, they are very, very vulnerable and will be eaten and attacked by a host of animals, mainly birds, but even other crocodiles will feed on them, rather. Now, there's another predator going about its business, or at least there was one, just lurking on the rocky outcrop to the right of it. If you just go to the left a little bit, Ferg, it's hidden in that green right there in the center of your frame now, on the kind of right-hand side. Ah, there we go. It's a greenbacked heron, and it looks like it's just having a drink for now. Not necessarily doing any hunting. They're quite secretive and shy little herons, unlike their cousins, the grey heron and the black-headed heron. And I'm told some of you were lucky enough to see what was quite an interesting sighting of possibly the same very bird eating a baby weaver just a few days ago. And it was a difficult task for that small heron to swallow the weaver. As is often the case with the herons, they can catch on to prey, even big frogs that are difficult to swallow, which often provides us with some entertaining sightings. Now, I wonder, maybe it is hunting small little tadpoles or something, but it seems like it's just drinking. Now, there's a few other animals lurking about you, one of which is a... Oh, awesome. Ferg's found a closer heron of the same species right below us here. Look at that. And I love the way they are so sneaky and secretive. And well spotted, Ferg. This one seems to definitely be on the hunt. You can see it's very poised and ready to dart its sharp beak forward and snaffle up some prey. While we continue to watch it doing its thing, I'll be able to answer a question from Chitwa. And you would like to know if crocodiles will ever predate a young hippopotamus. And yes, I'm sure from time to time they will, especially if the hippo's mother is not closely guarding them. But like most mothers, they will be highly, highly protective of their youngsters. And there's actually a hippo right here with a tiny newborn that has been doing a good job keeping her baby safe. The baby's just ducked down into the water below her, but it'll need to come up for a breath fairly shortly. So if we just stay on this frame, I'm sure the youngster will pop up. And often we see it kind of trying to clamber onto its mother's back to get support. There's a red-billed oxpecker that's also on the scene, now 2, looking for any parasites, namely ticks. So doing a good job keeping this hippo parasite-free. You may have just got a glimpse of the little baby there pop up, and hopefully it will pop up again. It looks like it's being a little bit shy. But Chitwa, yes, I think it's fair to say that hippos will ordinarily do a good job protecting the youngsters against crocodiles, but crocodiles are definitely one of the continent's most effective predators, and they will attack just about everything, including us as humans, big male lions, and you get some massive Nile crocodiles that can overpower even the biggest of the African mammals. Come on, baby, poke your head out. There's lots of people that would love to see you. There we go. Cute. Ah, awesome. Hello. And you can see it's battling to clamber onto Mom's back, where it can rest its chin for a head up. Where its mom standing, it will be able to... Obviously, where its mom is now, she'll be standing, and the youngster's legs will be too short to be able to stand. They don't float, so that's why it's having to use Mom's back as a bit of a pillow, and what a cute scene that is. Chitwa, you would like to know what is the largest fish that a heron would be able to eat? And I think we should talk about the biggest heron if we're going to be talking about the biggest fish. And the biggest heron we get is called the Goliath heron. And interestingly, it's the largest heron on the planet. Herons are quite widely spread across the world. You'll probably find a lot of you have herons living in your hometowns or countries. And the Goliath heron is the largest of them all. And I would say that the biggest fish that they'd be able to feed on would be a catfish. And the reason why the catfish would be the largest fish that they can feed on is mainly due to the catfish's anatomy. It's a long and slender fish, quite tubular, therefore easy to swallow. Even if it's quite heavy, because it's long, it would be easier to swallow a large catfish as opposed to a medium-sized tilapia. A tilapia is a more regularly shaped fish, which is quite broad in terms of its height, and therefore it would be difficult to swallow. Well, very good. Well, we're going to stick around here. It's a beautiful evening here at the Chitwa Dam, so I'm going to continue to stick around and see what other animals we can show you. And while we wait, we're going to send you across to Noel, whose lion is up and hopefully on the move.
Well, he's not on the move, Scott, but he is up, thank goodness, and he is moving this, what's left of this kill around, so it's quite a fascinating sighting, and we're getting a little bit of views when he's picking it up that are going to be good for screenshot. Oh, no, don't lie down again. Don't be that guy. He's going to be that guy. I'm sorry, everyone, but you can see the kudu's ear there. It is a female kudu, a very large female kudu. Now, I have a thought that it was probably a pregnant female kudu as well, which would explain all the extra full bellies. usually a male kudu that's bigger than this one would feed that pride of 15 quite well, and everyone was fat, so that's a possibility. I know that's a hard thought to think about, but again, we are in the bush, and this is nature, and it is a really important part of nature. It's a really fascinating part of nature. Shelley, what a good question. Shelley, you want to know, will male lions kill their own cubs over food? So Shelley, lions, male or female, work very similar. I'm going to put it in a human perspective, where you get good parents and you get bad parents. Now that can be the way that they take care of their cubs and things like that. I've seen males sit with tiny little cubs inside their paws while females go out hunting, waiting for the females to come back. And I've seen males just randomly kill their own cubs. So at kills, it would depend on, one, the personality of the male. Two, is the male the father or an older brother? That's another scenario. And then three, just how hungry they were and how tenacious the cubs were being. So I have seen males kill their own cubs at kills. I've seen brothers accidentally kill their siblings. I've seen cubs that are sort of 6 months apart, where it's little sort of 2-3 month old cubs, and then the other one's sort of 8-10 months old, and fighting and accidentally having some injuries that occur from that have resulted in death. And I've seen males that are definitely the fathers of cubs come straight into a kill with females and just decimate whole litters just because they hadn't eaten so long. So yeah, that scenario does take place. For me, what's really important to take, not just out of your question, it's a very interesting question, but just out of the whole talk about lions as well, is everything is different and every scenario is different. So it's not really black and white. There's lots of shades of gray around it. But yeah, the personalities definitely play a huge role for me, in my opinion, and in my experience. You guys are doing good with the questions today. You always do good with the questions. You've got some really great stuff coming through. Don't forget, for anyone that might just be joining us or anyone that's new, don't be shy. We are live. We are interactive. Hashtag Safari Live on the Twitter or on the YouTube chat. You can send through comments as well. We also love comments. I'm annoyed that he got up so beautifully and then went more behind that bush. A few of you out there are wanting to let me know, for any of the new viewers that are watching with us, that this is the Birmingham male that you all have decided to call Tinyo. So that is him. Thank you very much for that. Now again, for anyone that's new with us, the Birminghams used to be a coalition of 5. They are now a coalition of 4. One passed away. And they were born in very early 2013, so they're just under... They're 5.5, just under 6 years old. And I'm still amazed. The first time I saw the Birminghams, I was like, yes, they must be 7 or 8, because they're very big boys. They've got very dark noses. They've got long, dark manes. But I think that has more to do with the fact that their coalition and their prowess as males has been quite epic. So their testosterone levels are very high, and they've developed quite quickly. Sometimes when males struggle to take over territories or find a territory, they don't go through their male puberty as well. Scarlett, you're curious to know what mammal could steal his kill. His coalition mates could steal his kill. If there was a huge clan of hyenas, sort of maybe 8 or 10, they could try, although he'd probably kill a few of them in the process. A pack of wild dogs might come and harass him a little bit, but from a distance. A male lion a male leopard is too small and would not with him this close. So either his coalition mates or other male lions might try. But he fought off the rest of the pride this morning for the skin and bones of this, so I think this particular male is not going to give up easily on his scraps. He's being extra super greedy today. Alright, now from one big cat in Africa to another, let's head back to my friend Tristan, who is busy with our prince, or duke, or king, however we're calling him these days, Tingana.
I am busy with him, but he is still sleepy, and there's a really nice sort of shot of that injured paw. Hopefully he's not going to ruin it with the other foot now, but you can see there's 1 or 2 little marks in between the pads there. Almost looks like a few bite marks in there. They're not big, but there's a little red spot between the dew claw and the rest of the pad, if you can see it, and then on the other side of the foot, directly on the other side, there's a little bit of a larger hole. So hopefully he'll turn his foot a little bit and we'll be able to show you that. But you can imagine how many miles and kilometers those feet have traveled and walked and been through. It is an incredible amount of work that they've gone through, particularly with Tingana, because Tingana is not shy of a long stroll through the African bush. He always seems to be moving all over the show. That's why it's been quite nice to actually have him for a few days just sort of stationary in our area. I remember the one time we had Tingana around the EP Arethusa Simambili cut line. There's a little triangle there and a little water hole, and he was in that area, and the next morning they followed the tracks all the way and they crossed into Djuma. From Djuma they came out into Little Gowrie, they went to Chitwa into Nkoro all the way to their lodge where he was seen during the night. Then from there he went into Cheetah Plains, through back past Chitwa, into a net, into Vessels, Hoffman's, Arethusa, and was found once again in the exact same place, but somebody had to follow his tracks all the way around for us to know that that was what has happened. And that walk is massive. That is a huge walk to go and to undertake, and even for a vehicle that would take you all of, I would say, probably on a game drive situation, 4 or 5 hours to cover that ground. So for a leopard to walk that in the space of 2 game drives, and was in the summer months, so the nighttime in the summer months is a lot shorter, and it was amazing that he managed to cover all of that distance. So he does like a long walk, and maybe that's just the way he is. He prefers that. So at the moment though, that's not happening. He's keeping it quite local, and I'm glad that he's decided local is Djuma, that's for sure, because it really is good to have him around, and I hope that he'll be okay. Yeah, at the end of the day, it is right in the heart of his territory where we are now, so he shouldn't have too many issues here over the next few days. Popo Kitty, I don't think there's any point that Tingana would really want to give up his territory, but if a younger, fitter, healthier male like the one that we were looking at just now decides to come in here and is really aggressive and is far more physical with Tingana than Tingana is able to match, then you'll find that he's reluctantly going to start moving out of the area and become a lot like Mvula in a way, and become a lot more nomadic. So he doesn't really want to give up territory. He's not going to go down without some sort of fight and some sort of resilience, and he's going to stand up to whatever threat comes his way. But ultimately he is aging, and time is not on the side of any animal really, and as time marches on, so these younger upstarts come through, and unfortunately for him, he'll have to eventually move out. The thing is though, is he's still in great condition, besides this paw that's a little bit sore, and that's just an injury that's come about in the last little bit. Tingana is in fantastic condition. He is big, he is healthy, he's got no muscle atrophy on him whatsoever. You can see those shoulders are still full of muscle and power. His belly's got food in it, his back legs are still looking good, so he's in no way in any bad shape. You can see there's not a single tick on him, and it's surprising because in summer months we start to see these animals really collect high tick loads, but he doesn't have a single one on him, which means that he's in great condition. And so it's just this paw that is giving him a little bit of trouble, but he's still got a number of months and years left in him. That's as far as I can see. Obviously you never know out here, and you never know what can happen, and Wild Dog is a perfect example of this, but for now he still looks fit and healthy and ready to carry on his reign over Djuma. Christina, no, I don't think it's a snake bite. Given that there's a wound under the paw and on top of the paw, I don't think that there is a snake bite. The one under the paw is very small. It's not easy to see. You can just see a little bit of pinkish flesh that is there and between all of the fur. And so it's not a massive gaping wound that side. The top side is the one that is a little bit more sort of open and kind of a bit more red and pussy. But his snake bite, you would have seen a situation where he would have swelled. You wouldn't have noticed any pink flesh. Generally, when snake bites happen on leopards, in my experience, is not always the case, that there gets a big swelling and it goes almost black where that swelling takes place, and you can really see that there's a lot more damage to that area. This looks a lot more like he fought with somebody, maybe even a hyena. He swatted at a hyena and a hyena bit him on the paw or something like that. Right. Now, while Tingana rests, and it's now almost the time for Tingana to start maybe going on an afternoon little walkabout. I'm sure he's a thirsty boy. Let's go back across to Scott, who's having a wonderful afternoon with his feathered friends.
We certainly are, and as you can see, this yellow-billed hornbill is snacking, and it's snacking on possibly the tastiest and most nutritious of all the foods a bird could wish to eat, reproductive termites, which are emerging from this termite mound. You can see there's a small little mound of earth, and termite mounds can be equated to icebergs in a way, in that often the part that you see is just the tip. Now, you'll also notice that this hornbill is being a bit of a bully. There's a whole host of other birds. There was a red-billed buffalo weaver that just flew out of shot. It earlier chased a little crested barbet away, and it's positioned itself right at the exit point, and it doesn't look like these termites are even getting a chance to fly. They've got 4 wings, and you might possibly see their wings glistening as he picks them up and feeds on them, but they're not even having a moment to fly off. He's just gobbling them all up. Now there's a wattled starling on the scene in the foreground. That's the crested barbet on the left of the mound. And they're all just waiting patiently. It's a pity they can't gang up on this hornbill and chase it away and then all have a chance to feed. But it seems like kind of the normal situation out here. The biggest, strongest animal gets to be a bit of a bully when it comes to feeding. And no different to a lot of other situations, be it elephants feeding, lions feeding. The biggest, strongest ones will be the ones that get the most and tastiest foods. Oh, it looks like a few termites managed to fly away there, but it seemed like the other birds that have been waiting patiently managed to fly up and nab them. They set off on their voyage to start their own life and family and termite mound. And this, what we're seeing right here, is a very, very big reason why so many birds migrate to this part of the world during our summer. It's almost entirely because of the fact that these reproductive termites are so numerous and so nutritious that they provide so many of our feathered friends with good food. And from time to time, not only the feathered friends will be the ones feeding on them. We've had sightings of even hyena feeding on these termites. RFRF, you've mentioned how cheeky this hornbill is, and I couldn't agree more. It's a cheeky bully. But I guess it's the way nature goes, and there'll be times when it too is bullied out of sightings, or not sightings, out of buffets by even bigger birds than itself. Hello, Coco Kitty. You'd like to know if we also get the Indian myna bird here in the Kruger National Park. And generally, no, we don't. But from time to time, they do actually come onto the scene. And I remember at the Arathusa waterhole, there used to be a pair of Indian mynas that we would see from time to time. They don't belong here, but they've definitely done very, very well in a lot of the cities of South Africa. They tend to enjoy the city life more than the bush life. Some of you may well remember those Indian mynas that we saw when we used to traverse the Arathusa property. Oh, good catch. That hornbill just almost flew into its mouth, though. It didn't even have to move too much, but it was a good show of its ability to swiftly maneuver that big banana-like beak. Hi, Matt. You'd like to know if by looking at a termite mound you can tell whether it's active or abandoned. And yes, as a general rule you can, unless it's very recently abandoned, then it would be difficult to tell. But once they've been abandoned for a while, you tend to find that a host of other animals will move into them and start creating bigger holes and tunnels within them. So if they are well sealed, like this one over here, and there's no major gaping holes, that's a good indicator that it is still active. Because the termites do need to regulate the temperature within these mounds, and they do that by opening and closing small vents. And the reason that they need to maintain a certain temperature within the mounds is because they are expert farmers. They rely on farming their own feces. And what they do is they farm a very specific kind of fungus, which helps further break down their poop. And then they feed on that fungus because they battle to break down the cellulose and lignin, which they feed on all the dead plant matter. What you cannot tell by looking at a termite mound is how big it is, though. That's the tricky thing. As I said earlier, it can be equated to an iceberg. We can see just the tip poking out here, but there could be a massive network of chambers and tunnels underneath the ground. I saw quite an interesting experiment where they emptied a cement truck into a termite mound, and they came back with some archaeologists a few weeks later, once the cement had dried, and they slowly worked around and had this massive cement structure which showed them exactly how big and how intricate the termite mound was. I'm guessing it was an old abandoned one that they emptied the cement into, and quite an interesting experiment, that's for certain. Oh, there's a lilac-breasted roller. Well done, Ferg. Bright flashes of turquoise. Hello, Sanka. You'd like to know why the African hornbills are more brightly colored. Oh, there's another lilac-breasted roller. It's also cashing in on this bounty of reproductive termites that are emerging. Sorry, Sanka, you'd like to know why are our hornbills... oh, you're saying they're colorless compared to the hornbills in India. Well, I'm not too sure. We'll have to ask Mother Nature to let us know why it is that your hornbills are more brightly colored. Maybe it's to compete with the very impressive peacocks that you get cruising around India. And you also have some very brightly colored chickens, I'm told. The forest chicken of India is a very beautifully colored bird. But yeah, the hornbills are fairly drab, I guess it's fair to say. Their beaks are the brightest color. I don't actually have a clue what the Indian hornbills look like, so I must do some research on that. But it definitely is interesting how similar species of birds differ so greatly in different parts of the world. Very, very good. Well, we're going to leave these guys to continue snacking and head back to the Chitwa waterhole for the last few minutes of the safari as the light becomes gold. And while we do that, we are sending you back to Noel to get an update on the lion.
He is still doing what he was doing before, everybody. He hasn't really moved, which I'm actually kind of sad about because he still has that silly bush in front of his face. But the light's getting a little bit better. The shadow contrast is not so bad. So I'm hoping he stands up again for us and then looks into the setting sun, because that's going to be a beautiful screenshot for everybody. I just want to say thanks to everyone that sends me your screenshots every now and then, and the messages and things on the Instagram, the IG, whatever we're calling it these days. I do appreciate it. It gives me a smile every day. So, yes, he is getting to parts of this kudu that I didn't think he really would want. His belly is not small. But a good point to think about is that he doesn't necessarily know where his next meal is going to come from, and his coalition mates are not really around. Not that he can't hunt for himself. Of course he can. But yeah, that could be it. Or he's just the greediest lion you've ever seen in your entire life. Either one. You guys can pick. Now, my question for all of you with the remaining time that we have is, would you like to stay here with him and see if he stands up and gives us a little bit more of a show? Or would you like me to search for something else to see? You can send that through #SafariLive on Twitter, or answer that on the YouTube chat. Or if any of you have any stories about the Birmingham males that you want to share, please send them through. We love those. Stand up now. There we go. Now you can actually see where his carnassial shears have taken the skin really off of the bone there around the face. Those are the teeth of the kudu. He's covering up now with his paw. Can we hear that? All right. Sorry, that crunching sound with the carnassial shears is quite loud for us, but unfortunately I think it's just we're picking up more of the bird noises and insect noises around us. But it's a crunching. I'm trying to think of what it would be like at home. If you're eating really crunchy cereal, maybe? Well, that's a horrible example. I can't think of an example. I'll think of one just now. His mane's faring a little bit better. His brother's mane this morning was horrendous in that rain, being very flat, although his hasn't really found its poof back yet. Oreo Boots, you're curious to know if any or all of the big cats that we have here have pink padded paws. Oreo, they're actually black on the bottom. Those pads are a very dark sort of charcoal black color. I don't know about any of the other large cats. There's 8 large cats across the world. We only have 3 on the continent. So I'd be interested to know if any of the others do, but I have a feeling that they're also probably a dark color, similar to ours, and it's very rough. They're rough like sandpaper and quite hard and calloused, obviously, because they need them to be that way to be able to walk around well. There's the gruesome side of that kudu face. Again, for anyone that's sensitive, this is not the sighting for you. For anyone that enjoys the predator-prey action, this is definitely a sighting for you. I can hear his tongue rasping on the skin there, but I think it's a little bit too light. Senzo has pointed out that there might be a little bit of a sunset behind us. Senz, do you think we should get the sunset a little bit for everybody? We haven't really had a chance to spend as much time as we normally like to spend with you because we've been gearing up for our very special live show on Thursday. Yes, Thursday. Friday for us, but Thursday for the States. And you know we all love a sunset, so there's actually quite a nice view here. So I think, why don't we take a little moment and look at it going through the leaves of those marula trees there, setting over the South African bushveld, and we'll just do our moment of silence. We can do a moment in silence of remembrance of our wild dog. Beautiful, the wind rustling through the trees, a little bit of bird song in the background. All right, so our wild dog friend has traveled on. So we've just been asked by a couple of people if we could just recap what happened with our wild dog for anyone new or anyone that missed any of the shows, as it does happen. Well, there was a wild dog from the Mbali and the Investec Mbali breakaways that had an injury, most likely from a lion, and he was left up at Biffles Hook Dam and was unable to carry on. His back right leg was pretty much broken. He was up there. The pack had to move because the pack needs to feed. The pack visited it a couple of times and did contact call for him, but unfortunately it didn't help. We then had a sighting where a hyena was trying to eat the wild dog, but he fought back ferociously, so many of us were hoping that that would mean that he would carry on. Senzo's raising his hand at the back. Senzo had a whole elaborate escape plan for the wild dog. He's been talking about it for about 3 days. It involved various things and sort of disguises and bringing it home and all sorts of very sweet thoughts that I'm sure many of you had as well. And then unfortunately this afternoon when we went back to look at him, he had passed on. So that's a short little recap on that. Now let's head on over to a happier moment with Tristan, and I'm hoping he's still with Tingana, but we'll have to wait and see.
I am indeed, and what we've found is the lacerations that are all over the side of him. So he must have had a fight with someone. You can see there's a tick in there. There's also a few cuts and scrapes. There's another cut there. So there's a lot of little superficial wounds. So maybe he had a little altercation with another leopard somewhere along the line. But there's definitely some little claw marks and cuts and scrapes on his body, and those are signs of a male leopard who's had a hard life. And not surprising given the fact that he is approaching what we think around 11-12 years old, and at the end of the day that's a long time for a male leopard to be out here, and he really has gone through the mill and has had to fight a lot of big males to be in the area that he's in. So it has been really interesting just to have a good look at him. We've had a great sort of sense of his size from being as close as we have been this afternoon. We've even watched his spots moving around. It seems as though the sun is starting to go down. It's starting to get to that time where I thought he might move, but unfortunately it's still time for a nap in the world of Tingana. Now, of course, it is that time of the day, unfortunately, where we start to head back home. It's been an absolutely incredible afternoon. It's a sad one, but an incredible one nonetheless, and great to be out with Scott and Noel. So from both of them, myself, Wiem, Senzo, and Fergus, we hope that you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all tomorrow afternoon on the Sunset Safari.